What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Questions You Never Thought to Ask, the Whitewater Kayaking Podcast. My name is Seth Ashworth, and before I get going on this week's informational, informative, and fun episode, I just wanted to give a quick thank you shout out to the people who support this podcast on Patreon. Patreon is a crowdfunding platform where you can chip in a couple of bucks every month and help keep the podcast going, and in return, I do my best to get the podcast up early there for Patreon listeners to hear before it goes live. I do apologize. Lately, I have been a bit slow to getting episodes up there, but I'm endeavoring to do better, and I, fingers crossed, will be doing better to close out this year. But to those people who are disappointed, I'm sorry. If you want to be a part of that support, just check out patreon.com/Seth Ashworth. That's patreon.com/Seth Ashworth. Now, without any further ado, let's get going. All right, welcome back to Questions You Never Thought to Ask, the Whitewater Kayaking Podcast. This week, we are talking about a subject that is very close to the hearts of a lot of kayakers, and that is kind of river protection. I've been very fortunate in my life to paddle a number of places that are no longer paddleable because of man-made interference from damming. Those places are either underwater or dry now, and I feel very fortunate to have done that, but I have not always done the best at advocating for those places. And so this week we're talking with Tom Laws from saveourrivers.org. And he's actually someone who does a better job than me advocating for those places. So Tom, welcome aboard.
Nice one. Thanks, Seth. I've got to be honest, I was in exactly the same position as you. I paddled lots of places, saw lots of cool things, and never really advocated for these places at all. It was something that had never really occurred to me. It'd be something that I could do.
So let's take it back to the start, Tom. How did you, because you're not the only person who runs Save Our Rivers, right? Do you want to give us a rundown of what it is that your organization does now and how that got started in day one? And maybe so like a broad strokes overview of what you're currently doing, and then we'll go to how it got started and then work back to present day.
Nice one. So Save Our Rivers is it's an organisation that gives the impression of being pretty big, pretty far-reaching. But when you pick it apart, it's essentially myself and Dan Yates, based in North Wales, although Dan's out in Austria at the moment. And we're fighting for free-flowing rivers across Europe. But we very much kind of fell into that by accident, really. Kind of back in, I had to look up the dates actually. I couldn't realise it was this long ago now. But back late 2013, it kind of came to the attention of North Wales kayakers that the Fairy Glen section of the River Conwy, so kind of an iconic section of river that actually has a county named after it. So pretty significant river in the area, and a real test piece for whitewater kayakers, was under threat from a hydro scheme. And early on in that process, I was really like, well, that won't happen. That's ridiculous. And if it does, I'm sure they'll have done some environmental work and it will be fine. It will be great. And it was only really as the process rumbled on that I realised just how bad this dam was going to be, how ungreen hydro is, how non-renewable rivers are as a resource, and how we had to do something about it. So kind of from there, there was a group formed, Save the Conwy, as we were then. And that was a sort of ragtag group of kayakers, anyone who was kicking about, everyone who paddled the river. And we started doing everything. We didn't know what to do. So we thought, well, if you throw enough at the wall, some of it sticks. So we were encouraging people to log paddles. We were doing calculations to work out, based on the kind of plans from the engineers, how many days of kayaking would be affected. And I guess it was kind of as we went through that process that we realized there was more to these wild places to be lost than just the recreational kayaking. And as planning was submitted kind of around 2015, we ended up working with local angling organisations, local conservation organisations, charities within the national park like Snowdonia Society, as well as some brands. Some brands started supporting us. So Patagonia and NRS have been kind of there from the start. And in 2016, the first planning application for the Conwy was refused, which was then resubmitted. And then September 2016, RWE withdrew it and haven't submitted again.
And so that's the RWE. Sorry for I haven't been in the UK for some time, but RWE was the contractor who was trying to get that dam going.
Yeah, sorry. So RWE are part of npower, or npower are part of RWE. They're a big multinational power company who they do all sorts of things. As I was looking back actually through my notes, I think in 2016, Which, the magazine, voted them the worst power company in Europe. Which yeah, I can stand by that. But actually, there are a few other kind of organisations you wouldn't expect necessarily to be involved in something so environmentally destructive. So there was an engineering firm who hang their hat on eco and renewables called Dilas, who were kind of Welsh. They were local, based in Mid Wales, and actually all of the land was owned by the National Trust. So the National Trust were kind of totally complicit in this plan as well, and it did quite a lot.
Wait, the National Trust was like down for hydro?
The National Trust were mad keen for it.
That is unbelievable.
At one point in Snowdonia, and I'm not sure, I haven't checked if this is up to date now, but certainly at one point, the National Trust had literally strips of land that they owned because they had rivers on them, so they could apply for micro hydro. At the time when the micro hydro kind of feed-in tariffs were really good.
Wow.
Yeah, so the National Trust clearly do some pretty cool things. I've got some friends down in Cornwall, and they're involved in kind of rewilding into tidal zones and things like that. But at the same time, they were keen for having an ancient woodland, and one of the most special places in Wales absolutely trashed.
That seems unbelievably duplicitous that like an organization like National Trust, which seems to be like on the face of it is like preservation and looking after the environment, would also be doing arguably like some of the worst environmental damage for like non-green energy that you could be doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd like an example of what the National Trust have been up to, if you walk up the Watkin path on Snowdon, one of the more popular ways up Snowdon from kind of the Bethgelert side, the river that you walk past there, the Cwm Clan, you'll see a hydro scheme in there, and you'll see the scars of that running all the way down the side of the hill as well.
Wow, that is, I'm kind of reeling from that an organization like National Trust, which is ostensibly very similar to like Parks Canada or the National Park System in the US, is also super down for something so destructive as micro hydro.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, and certainly at the time, they were, the arguments were pretty. It was pretty tough to argue, because you're effectively arguing against what people have always described as green energy or renewable energy. But rivers aren't renewable. If you stick a barrier in it, that river's done. That river is irreversibly changed. And John, the guy who runs Snowdonia Society, said to us at one point, "You can't rebuild nature even with a really big JCB."
Yeah, you should get that on a t-shirt. That's probably the most accurate thing you could say, right? So
yeah. So we were kind of pretty blown away. I learned a lot. I'll be honest, I was super naive when the scheme came out, or the things were announced. Like I said, I was like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And actually, I can attribute my kind of whole move to activism to one guy, to this guy called Dan Hammond, who worked for Dilas, one of the firms who were kind of putting the plans together. So in kind of good old-fashioned activism style, we'd set up a petition because we didn't know any better. We thought, petition will do it. And he commented below that petition saying, "Oh, do you know, I think this is a really good idea, and I would encourage everyone to write in support of this scheme, not signing a petition against it. But LinkedIn is a wonderful thing." And it turned out he was one of the kind of chief guys on this project. And for me, that was kind of like the turning point, if you like, in seeing just what a mess whole thing was. Kind of from there, courtesy of the Freedom of Information requests, we dug up all the letters of support that had been written for this scheme, and pretty much all of them had been submitted by either family members or directly from kind of senior members of RWE and of Dulles, of the two firms involved in putting the plans together.
That seems so shady. Is that common practice? That seems like it's shady. It feels shady.
It feels shady. I think you're allowed to do it. I think doing it from your wife's email address so that it's not, timmy@rwe.org, is I'd say shady is probably the best word for it, really. There was certainly no upfrontness in any of the correspondence. I mean, the beauty of the UK planning system is that everything is public. And if you want to go and have a look at these documents, you can get hold of these documents. So we did, and we went and had a good route through. And then I think one of the successes of our campaign was then publishing all these findings, and kind of laying bare just what a shady process the whole thing was.
And so that was back in 2013 to 2016, and you kind of started to figure out how to advocate for rivers, not just from like that user group of like whitewater kayakers, which is relatively speaking a small user group, but kind of incorporating the wider users of an area who would be affected by the destruction of our kind of natural environment. What have you done since then, since that first Save the Conway project?
So I guess it was almost perfect timing, or terrible timing, depending on how you're looking at it. We were literally sat down having a beer, celebrating the plans being withdrawn, and that looking like the Conway was going to be remaining flowing free. And we took a phone call from Snowdonia Society to say, look, I know it's Friday night. I think it's Friday night, but there's something going to be discussed in the Welsh Senedd, so the Welsh government level on Tuesday, and they're looking to change how national parks are managed and place less focus on conservation. Can you guys help? Oh, by the way, it's pretty late on a Friday night. We're all off over the weekend. So from there, me and Dan, a couple of beers in, knocked up some template letters, and I think it was by about 1 o'clock in the morning, there were template letters out encouraging people to write to their local government representatives in Welsh government, asking them to question this process on the Tuesday. And when we tuned in to then watch the debate on the Tuesday, it was humbling to see how many people had answered that call, how many people had taken the time to write to their assembly member, and to hear quotes and things that we'd put into template letters, or ideas that we'd shown people to be read out was like I say, pretty humbling. And we kind of realized that actually, mostly by luck and a bit of good judgment, we were pretty good at this, and we should not just hang up our hats with the Conway. That maybe we should carry on and become something bigger than just Save the Conway.
And that's when you moved from just Save the Conway to Save Our Rivers, and kind of took on a bit slightly bigger mission.
Yeah. I mean, our mission is ever evolving, and well, which is a polite way of saying we're making it up as we go along. But
I think everyone is, so that's fine.
Yeah. I think that's part of becoming an adult, isn't it? You realise.
Yeah, that's what I'm figuring out right now.
Everyone's literally making it up as they go along. But there've been a couple of small hydro schemes in North Wales that we've successfully stopped on the Cynfal and the Clygwi. So that's been pretty successful. But we've also kind of, through the contacts and the friends that we've made along the way, ended up involved in kind of campaigns all across Europe. So at the moment we're involved in Patagonia's Vjosa National Park Now campaign. We're also working with the guys out in Austria on a kind of massive set of schemes that are building up across the Tyrol region. And kind of closer to home, we're kind of doing our best to help and do a bit of facilitating for the amazing guys at Save the Heart of Kendal, who are fighting a flood defence scheme that stands to trash the River Kent.
Can we talk about that Tyrol one for a minute? Because I briefly in 2011 I worked there out in Utz. Great time, lovely place, and I understand that they have been doing some shady dam building during. They took advantage of the pandemic and were getting after some construction work, which I think might have been illegal or was at least questionable.
I can't call it illegal because I couldn't say for certain. It was probably illegal.
It looks shady. From what I was picking up on,
shady.
It looks shady. Can you give everyone a rundown for people who are not familiar with the whole scheme?
As lockdown hit in Utstal, the construction company who'd put in these plans for, and I've got to make sure I get the timeline kind of right on this one. But
and for people listening along who don't know, we're talking about like the same area where Adidas Sickline race used to be, just further up that valley from the Sickline course. Beautiful area, great river, lots of epic kayaking, great mountain biking, great skiing, great paragliding, great climbing, great whatever pick an outdoor activity. You can probably do it there. Really nice, friendly people, super open. Super friendly community to live in and to be a part of, and kind of shocking to see how hard out they're going on this dam project.
Yeah, and I think at the time there wasn't even permission to build the dam, but while lockdown was on and while people were literally not allowed out of their houses, they started building all the infrastructure to then get those dams into the river. So roads were going in, embankments were going in, all the rest of it, so that the moment they could, that work could continue. We were super lucky. We had some of the guys from Pistiff Productions were out there, and we organised for a couple of their fines to be paid after they'd done a bit of filming and things. And we were then lucky to team up with those guys, with the guys from Free Rivers Fund and Wet Tyrol, who are kind of amazing, superhuman people, and WWF Austria, pulled together some videos and some campaign, literally while everyone was locked in their homes. We might have been locked up, but we still had the internet. And we use that to our advantage, and the fight for the free-flowing rivers in Austria goes on. Construction started on that one, but the campaign is far bigger, far more reaching than that. And we're honoured to have a seat at that table, to have organisations like Wet Tyrol and WWF getting in touch and saying, we need your help, and like I say, humbling.
It's awesome that there's an organization that you and Dan are kind of spearheading here to give people more of a route. I think something that I feel quite often, and I'm sure lots of people share this feeling, when you hear about a new hydro project or something coming up on a river you really enjoy, is just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I know I don't want this, but I don't know what to do about it, and I don't know what steps to take, and I don't know how to proceed. And things like template letters and writing to your, whoever your representative is, and having an organization that can say, these are the steps that you can take right now to do something about this, is so important and so valuable, I think, for people like me who are just like a bit helpless, just feeling a bit helpless, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's super easy to feel helpless, and the process is designed to be difficult to get into. The UK planning system looks really complicated, and their websites are out of date and antiquated, and that sort of thing. So I think between me and Dan, we make a pretty solid team. Dan absolutely loves listening to electronic dance music really late at night, 6 coffees and 4 beers in, reading complicated planning documents, and then my kind of flair on things comes on then getting that message across, helping people communicate what the ideas are, what plans have been put in place, and then how they can kind of get that message out there, and get their voice heard. Particularly in the UK, we're lucky that we do have a legal planning system and a pretty public planning system, but it's not always used, and the rules that are written for it aren't always followed. But if we can find ways of kind of holding those who set them to account and making sure that they are followed, kind of that's where we've had our successes, really. But I mean, one of the things that we've been playing around with, and it's been pretty successful a couple of times, is taking kind of plans from planning applications and then overlaying them onto drone photos, so you can actually see what the real impact of this is, rather than a sort of black and white line drawing. You've got a photo of this place that you love, and you've got these plans slapped across it.
I was on your guys' website earlier today, and I was looking at Kent flood? What was the other one you mentioned there?
So the Save the Heart of Kendall. Yeah,
the Heart of Kendall. Yeah, so that's like to see a drone overlay photo with the lines on it of like, oh, this is all that's going to be affected. It's pretty incredible. What's happening there? Can you give us a rundown on that one? That like seeing the drone photo with the overlay, I was like, how is anyone signing off on this?
So the Save the Heart of Kendall scheme is enormous. It's messy, for sure. There's a lot of things going on, and me and Dan were really honoured a couple of years ago to go for a few beers with the guys behind that, who kind of needed a bit of help getting things going. So Kendall is a kind of the last town you get to on your way into the Lake District. So it's kind of gateway to the Southern Lakes, if you like, in England, and it has a river, the River Kent, which, as well as having some pretty good kayaking, not as good as the Ogwen, but pretty good kayaking just downstream of it. It also flows right through the heart of town. It is literally the heart of Kendall, and back in a few years ago, there were some enormous floods, which caused some serious damage and some serious problems for Kendall. And in a kind of slightly knee-jerk response to that, the Environment Agency have put together a kind of 3-phase plan for how Kendall can be protected, which is essentially stages 1 and 2 are build really big, ugly concrete walls in the hope that the river won't top over them. And then stage 3 is to stick a 6-meter high dam, which is, I think, the image you saw on our website. A 6-meter high dam just at the kind of northern end of Kendall, flood a load of fields, and essentially put something that looks a little bit like Hurley Weir in the middle of that, in a sort of attempt to slow down the flow of the Kent. What seemed to have happened in the kind of big floods, the Storm Desmond a few years ago, was actually the groundwater flowing before it even got to the river was what caused most of the flooding, and that a big dam on the river and big walls are not going to offer the protection that the Environment Agency have sort of alluded to. They have been caught saying that it won't offer the protection from events like Storm Desmond scale events. So it's a real mess. But Save the Heart of Kendall has been a great group. We've got guys there campaigning for a kind of natural flood management. We've got people on there campaigning to prevent the loss of the riverside trees. So as part of building the wall, around kind of 500 trees were due to be felled. And that number's been roughly halved off the top of my head. And that fight goes on. So I would imagine some of your listeners are going to come to Kendall Mountain Festival in a couple of months' time. Come and find us kind of on the Patagonia and Duostone stands. There'll be some more information and things there about hopefully some more things we can do.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are putting in some hard work, and definitely big ups to you guys. Let's talk a little bit about the future and just some speculative guessing on the future, because I'd love to hear what you've got to say about this. But obviously, climate change is a real deal. Increasing storms, like these big level storms, seem to be happening more and more often. How do you think that's going to impact like the work you're doing, and what do you forecast like government agencies, environment agencies, etc. Doing things like that Save the Kendall, Save the Heart of the Kendall project, and these kind of like knee-jerk. Do you think we're going to see more of these knee-jerk schemes? What kind of thing should people be on the lookout for in their local area that sound like they're good on the face of it, but actually are not going to be? Because on the face of it, that the one we just talked about sounded like, oh yeah, great, we'll build a big wall and that's going to keep the water out. But when you break it down, it's like actually the problem's not that it's going to overflow this wall. It's that the groundwater is moving to the river faster than a wall could block it. What do you kind of? I know we're speculative here, but just for entertainment purposes, what do you expect we're going to see? What should people be on the lookout for, and what can they do if they see something like that come up in their area?
So I guess I read a quote just before we started. Actually, I think it's from the Lorax about the kind of pace of change. And it was to do with the wildfires in America, which was, we didn't used to have wildfire season. We used to have autumn. And it's that kind of slow change where people think, oh, no, it is normal for everything to be on fire for a month. And it totally isn't. I think as kayakers, as people who love the outdoors, we are the ones who are best connected to those local areas, to those places where we choose to play. And if we're choosing to play there, we've got to protect them. And I think by being in those places, you start to recognize those changes. I mean, the first time that we knew that the Conway had a plan on it was because some of the paddlers bumped into one of the engineers who was making some measurements. So I think from that point of view, you've got to get real. If you play somewhere, you've got to protect it. You've got to be fighting for it, and you need to know your local area. And then from there, I think it's just a case of getting connected. There's so many amazing organisations. There's ourselves, Three Rivers Fund, Wet Tyrol. Wherever you are, there will be an organisation fighting for whatever wild place you're after. And from there, just engage with those guys, ask for help, ask for support, and just find out everything you can. Get hold of every document you can and start reading. And it's not glamorous. It is pretty boring. It's pretty hard work. I'd recommend some strong coffee. But you've got to start engaging in the planning process. And we have a legal voice. We have a voice to object to these things. And done right, it's pretty powerful. Done wrong, you might as well be screaming into a bin. So it's a kind of a case of finding an organisation who can help you with your wild place, and then engaging in the legal process. John, who came out with the amazing quote before, told us when we were objecting to the Conway scheme, if you're chaining yourself to a digger, you're 5 years too late.
What's your hot take on countries where the due process is not as due?
I don't know. I guess I'm super lucky in that I'm pretty unlikely to get pepper sprayed sat behind the computer putting drone images together. I think in countries where the process is more questionable, should we say, I think there are still things to be done. Certainly, the Blue Heart campaign that Patagonia ran, a lot of that was involved in campaigning to encourage kind of banks and things to not be investing in these schemes in the first place. And kind of if that funding dries up, then the schemes dry up.
Yeah, right on. That's something that I wonder about sometimes, because a few rivers I've done overseas that have had shady hydro projects go in very quickly, and it just makes me sad. I wonder if you had a hot take on that, but it would be encouraging if more big, kind of heavy hitter companies like Patagonia could leverage those banks and put some pressure on them to say, come on, man, you don't need to be putting your money into this.
it's super tricky. I think if you've got an enormous hydro project and you're pouring 1 million tons of concrete or 1.2 million tons of concrete, no one's going to know the difference, and that 0.2 million tons worth of concrete's worth of money can just disappear into back pockets and things like that. It's super tricky. I'm certainly not going to be flying out to Peru with my otter costume just yet to chain myself to a digger, unfortunately.
Tom, I'm pretty stoked on hearing about all the work you guys are doing. Where can people keep up with the Save Our Rivers crew on what they're doing and kind of get involved if they're on a project in that area?
So the best places are just going to be saveourrivers.org, where you can find out, kind of look back through all the stuff we've done, see the campaigns that are ongoing at the moment, or through Instagram, we're at Save Our Rivers, or on Facebook, we are Save Our Rivers as well.
And hypothetically speaking, if I was a member of a community in an area where Save Our Rivers was not currently operating, what would I have to Google search to find the local equivalent of Save Our Rivers for my area?
It's pretty tricky, but one of the best things you could do is head over to the Patagonia website, find something called Patagonia Action Works, and all of the groups that have been funded by Patagonia are listed there. You can search by venue, or you can search by the kind of thing you'd like to protect. So that's a pretty powerful resource that's kind of growing and growing at the moment. And kind of beyond that, I think just engage with any user groups. And if there isn't a group, maybe now's the time to set one up.
Yeah, right on, man. I mean, be the change you want to see in the world. Tom, thanks for coming on. Do you have any final thoughts before we close this out?
No, I think everyone just needs to get out there and go and enjoy these amazing wild places that the world has given us. And if you're going to play in them, you need to protect them.
I will second that. This has been Tom Laws and Seth Ashworth on Questions You Ever Thought to Ask, the Whitewater Kayaking podcast, and I will speak to you in a future episode. Peace.